You're listening to the Bill McIntosh Show.
One of the poems, actually, A Cowboy Remembers, when I wrote that poem, I took one line, which is lower in the poem, that said, a handshake and grin is mightier than any paper and pen. So if a cowboy gives you his word, it's better than any contract you'll ever get. Because if you have a contract, you can find a loophole to get out of it. But if you stand face to face, shake a man's hand and give him your word, there is no backing out. You are committed.
Hey, folks, what do you do when you got a poet? You got to introduce him with a poem. Anyway, now many a man plus boys and some gals will gather near the cowboy so as to hear his great tales. They tap into the culture of the horse's best friend and drink in the wisdom that won't quickly end. Inspiration comes from the Lord when you're working the plains, keeping faithful in sunshine, bitter snow and cold rains. Come now to hear legends. I'll give you a lift to cowboy lore living. It's my Christmas gift. So whether you're a youngster or you're long in the tooth, it's time for a storyteller whose name is Mike Booth. Mike, how are you?
I'm good, Bill. I love that very much. That's a good poem. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, that's it. Coming from a cowboy poet.
That's one of the
from
best.
Another one who don't know it.
One of the best introductions I've ever had.
Wow. Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Well, let me tell people a little bit more about you now that they know that you're a poet. And not only is Mike Booth a poet, he's a singer and he's a songwriter. He's author of the book, A Cowboy Remembers, Western Religious and Patriotic Poetry. That's right. It's a book that reflects his feelings for the cowboy of the Old West. Writing poetry for over 25 years, Mike captures the real-life stories of cowboys and the life that they lead. His inspiration about the cowboy way of life has also been informed by owning a ranch in Ocala, Florida, where he has kept as many as 63 horses at one time and participated in rodeo events, including barrel racing and calf and team roping. His work has included being an auctioneer of livestock, fine arts, and antiques, as well as being a host on the Gem Shopping Network, and as a Nashville recording artist, performing throughout the southern United States. Mike now lives in Duluth, Georgia with his wife, Kathy. His website, if you want to find out more, is www.acowboyremembers.com. That's www.acowboyremembers.com. So anyway, well, Mike, it's great to have you on the Bill McIntosh Show. How are you today?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for having me on your show today, Bill. I really appreciate it.
Hey, it's the least I can do, And by the way, your book, A Cowboy Remembers, Western Religious and Patriotic Poetry, I think that would make a great Christmas gift.
I would love to disagree with you, but I just can't. I agree with you. I think it would make a great Christmas gift.
Sure it would. It'd be a lot of fun. I mean, you think of it, a lot of the useless gifts that people get for Christmas.
I'm very, very fortunate because most people who have bought a book have come back and purchased another book for a family member. So it really would make a great Christmas gift. You hit the hammer right on the nail.
Yeah, something, it used to be that culture, family time was marked not by an iPhone or an Android, but marked by singing songs and great poetry, right?
Yes, sir. It's as a matter of fact, how many you remember the older movies and people just stood around the piano and sang Christmas songs? That wasn't just in the movies. People actually did that at home if they had a piano.
And it was a blast, wasn't it?
It was. And I've been able to participate at parties and where a number of us have gotten up and sing. And then we all sing as a group. And it really, that is the reason for the season. I mean, loving your neighbor, being a part of life. And that's all.
Celebrating.
Just life.
Yeah, and celebrating especially the life of the newborn King, Jesus Christ, born on Christmas Day. And, and along the way, we build bridges. That's what it's all about. It's something that we need to do because lately our public life has been marked by division and hostility. It's sad, but it's true. So tell me something. I mean, this is a fascinating story. How'd you get to be a cowboy poet?
Well, I've always enjoyed cowboy poetry, and I attended and got to know a few of the really good cowboy poets in my life: Baxter Black, Waddy Mitchell, Tom Chambers, Red Steagall. These guys always are someone they inspired. We lost Tom Chambers and we lost Baxter Black. Tom Chambers at one point was the president of the Western Music Association, but he was also a cowboy poet. And all of these guys inspired me. And I just sat down one day, and this was back, golly, in the 80s. And I said, I think I'm going to write a cowboy poem. And I wrote one every day for 25 days straight. And then so in 1991, the Elko, Nevada Cowboy Gathering, which is the granddaddy of all poetry and music gatherings in the U.S. in January, was just starting. And I sent 3 poems out, got accepted, was sent back, had my time slots, was ready to go. But I was auctioneer at the time, and I wasn't working for myself. I was working for an auction company. And I went to them all excited, gassed up. Man, I'm going to Elko. I'm going to be a somebody. And he said, well, you're going to be a somebody here because I have scheduled an auction sale. And I said, well, I have a feeling this is going to be a big deal. And I really would like to be a part of this. And he said, well, you're welcome to go. But Mike, I'm going to have to fire you if you go because I have to have you for this sale. This is a big sale and you can't. So I had to call, cancel, eat crow, tell them I'm sorry. And it kind of frustrated me. And I just put the poems in a folder and put them away. I continued to do cowboy poetry, but I never did my own. I would always do other people's that I thought were better. And then 2 years ago, we're ruffling through the attic and open up a cardboard box. And I've been married 31 years. And my wife says, what'd you find? I said, I found these poems. I thought I'd lost these. She said, what poems? Now, she didn't even know that I'd written them.
Oh, my gosh.
And so I started reading her a few of the poems, and she went, when did you write those? And I said, well, before we got married. And I said, I'm going to take these down and have them edited, so punctuation and spelling and everything's correct. And I'm going to make about 20 of these, and I'm going to give them to the children and grandchildren, for something to remember me by down the road. Wow. And so I take it to a friend of ours, and I said, I need to get this edited. Well, she is one of the number one children painters in the country. And she says, I got just the person. And he sends me to a young lady by the name of Sally Bowles, who edits the book. But she said, I will not edit this book unless you tell me about yourself. Well, that was, I thought, 15 minutes. Well, hour and a half later, I'm still running my mouth like I am with you right now. And she said, okay, I'll edit the book. So I go back over. She texts me and I go back over. It's finished. And what are you going to do with this? And I told her, and she went, oh, that's a mistake. But there's only one problem. And I said, what's that? She said, you don't have enough. So she said, you need 14 more poems to make this worthwhile. So I went back, and in about another 2 weeks, I took back 14 more poems, and P.S., we have the book.
Wow. Amazing, huh? One of these days, maybe if we'll have the right person back in the White House, we'll have a poet laureate who's a cowboy poet. How about that, huh?
That would be fun. That would be fun.
I think was there a poet laureate under Ronald Reagan? He would have been the perfect guy to do that.
Well, I know that Red Steagall is the poet, the poet testing 1, 2, test, the poet laureate for the state of Texas.
Oh, wow. Interesting. They have a poet laureate for the state of Texas. How many states have poet laureates?
That I don't know. I honestly don't know. But I remember seeing him on Johnny Carson one night. He was talking about it.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
Sir.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what is it? What is it that what is it that people can learn about cowboy culture from a cowboy poet? Cowboy, because you're a cowboy, you had to take care of your horses and your livestock, so
Well,
you did
a
it on
lot,
horseback.
regardless of what else is going on in your life. And we live in such a fast paced world right now that it's almost hard to associate with what a true cowboy has to do. It doesn't matter if it's 30 degrees below zero and you have to go out and take a hammer and bust the ice so the cattle can drink, or if it's 120 degrees and you're sitting on that horse just wondering why in the world I'm doing this. The stock always comes first. You always have to take care of that stock. So in a cowboy's mind, that's the number one thing he has to do. That bleeds over into family. Your family, you have to always put your family in the right perspective. It puts God in perspective. We were just talking about Christmas. Without Christ, there would be no Christmas. And then your country is, you have to be in a country, and I'm sorry, there's a lot of people that disagree in today's world, but you have to live in a country you're proud of. And I am so privileged to be an American citizen.
Amen. Wow. Par excellence, a cowboy's a servant.
He's a servant to a way of life. And I mean, when I say way of life, I don't mean now I'm not into the cattle, but he's really to himself. He's a servant to a way of life. As one of the poems, actually, A Cowboy Remembers, when I wrote that poem, I took one line, which is lower in the poem, that said, a handshake and grin is mightier than any paper and pen. So if a cowboy gives you his word, it's better than any contract you'll ever get. Because if you have a contract, you can find a loophole to get out of it. But if you stand face to face, shake a man's hand and give him your word, there is no backing out. You are committed.
Isn't it an absolute national tragedy that people don't keep their word anymore?
Well,
and on a public stage.
Really, I mean, it's to me, my wife will tell you, I've gotten myself in the jackpot so many times because people that know me, I actually had a realtor come to my house and he said, Mike, do I have the exclusive on your house? And I said, yes, you do. We shook hands. True story. His secretary leaves, goes out to the car, comes back in. He says, what is that? She said, well, that's a contract for him to sign. He turned around, looked at me and said, Mike, do I have your exclusive? I said, yes, sir, you do. He said, go put that back in the car. That's the biggest compliment that I think I've ever been paid in my life. Oh. Trust is something, I say this when I'm selling jewelry on TV, and I mean it from my heart, just not a sales pitch. This is what I actually feel. If you buy something from me and you give me your money, I will spend it. I promise you I'll spend it. But if I can earn your respect, I'll have it the rest of my life.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, it's so true, huh? And you know what is so important about this whole issue of trust in business? It just makes it easy for people to make agreements.
It makes it, actually, it makes everything in life easier.
Yeah, let me tell a little anecdote. I think you're going to really love this. And you probably have seen evidence of it yourself. I remember a time way back, I don't live in the United States anymore. I live in Peru. And I remember a guy who was studying law. His mother was an attorney. He was studying to be an attorney. And this was in Colombia, South America. And he had, for a while, he had lived in Louisiana. And he remarked at how memorable it was that in this little town, Louisiana, they had the little town had its own newspaper, and they had a stack of newspapers under a rock, and next to the rock was a bowl. And in the bowl was a little sign that said 10 cents per paper. and it was out in the middle of the middle crossroads, so people could come by, pick up the rock, take a paper, put in a dime. Think about that for a second. You could theoretically organize a business along those lines, being able to support yourself or help support your family based on trust. But if you don't have trust in a society, you can't do that. So you've wiped out so much gainful employment where everybody wins, where it's win-win all the way because somebody gets a newspaper or mango, or they get something they need, and the person selling it gets something they need, and everybody's happy.
I've seen fruit stands on the side of the road that operate under that premise, and they really do all right. I'm sure that there are a few bananas that walk off, but in all, they do all right. And I'm still the glass is half full kind of guy. When I feel like that the majority of the people are good, honest, hardworking people. It's just that we hear about the 5% that aren't the most, because they are who draw the attention. The people that go about their daily lives, living and enjoying life and doing the right thing. Well, there's no spectacular thing going on there. That's just what you're supposed to do. So that's why life is normal for them. But we hear about the part of the people that aren't normal. But I can't help it. I still believe that the majority of the people are just good, hardworking, honest people.
Sure. And so tell me about your farm. You still have your farm, right?
No, I sold it. I had 80 acres. I had 63 head of quarter horses, and I have a PhD in how to lose money in the horse business. And then I had about 25 head of Charolais. And
I'm sorry. Tell me what's Charolais? Is that
it's a white? It's a white cow.
Okay.
And
great.
Those we had, and I like to. I really enjoyed doing a lot of riding until I started getting on reining horses and cutting horses, and then I was ruined because that just the golly, just the adrenaline rush from either one of those it's like winning a Super Bowl every time you do it. I mean, it's just unbelievable how much fun it is, and how hard. Right. If you fancy yourself a pretty good rider of a horse, climb on a really good cutting horse. And I'm telling you, when you drop the reins to let him start to work, it looks like he swallowed his head. He just falls out from in under you. And then you just sit there and let him do the work. And it's an amazing feeling.
Right. That's a quarter horse, right? You said?
Yes, sir. Now, in doing auctions, I've sold standard breds, I've sold thoroughbreds, I've sold Arabians, I've sold quarter horses, I've sold paints, all Palomino sales. I've done every type of horse sale that's imaginable, because that's really in my heart what I wanted to do. But it was very, very hard to find a position because someone that already has the position, they're not going to go, oh, I'm sorry, Mike showed up, so now he's going to get the job. No, they were there. And so you have to wait and work and try to get your shot at different positions. And that's what I did, only there wasn't enough positions available. So I was very, very fortunate that a gentleman in the antique business, Al Scudder, in 1980, took me under his wing. Why, I don't know, but he did. And God could not have given me a better mentor. He taught me so much about the industry.
Well, let me ask you a question. Back up for a second before you talk about what you did with Al Scudder, right? That's his name, Al?
Yes, sir.
With antiques and different types of products. Is it possible to recreate an auction of some livestock? Is that too tall of an order? Because it's different every time with every animal, right?
Well, you mean like bring a horse in right now?
Yeah, in your imagination.
Okay.
You got a quarter horse.
All right, here in comes a 15-2 bay horse, beautiful head, nice throat flash, good top line. It's a Skipper W line on the top side and bar none on the bottom. He's a 4-year-old. He's been started. He's ready to go. What would you give for it? Would you give 10 to bid now, but about 10,000? You want to give 10 to bid now, but about 10 now? Would you give 7,500? Would you give 75 to bid now? But I've got 1,000 and now 1,500. One is offered and now would you give 15 to bid now? But about 2,000 and now 2,500. I'm at 2 now. Would you give 5 to bid now? But about 2,500. If you never thought of that, but I'm glad you did. 21 now 2. A 21 now. Would you give 2 to bid now? But about 22 and 3. 22 3. You're out, sir. 22 now. Would you give 3 to bid now? Sold. 2,200. You said no. I believed you. Sold. $2,200 goes to the gentleman there in the plaid shirt with the gray Stetson. How's that? Is that all right?
Great. Oh, what a blast, man. How many of those on a normal, I mean, I don't know if you have a normal day on a Saturday. What day of the week would you do these?
Well, it depends on how many head. There's a lot of times it's multiple day auctions. If you went to an Arabian sale, they would usually have between 30 and 33 to 35 head. They would keep it small. If you went to a quarter horse sale, you could have a couple, 300 horses.
Wow.
The thoroughbred sale, that's a multiple 4 or 5 day sale, will have 1,000. I mean, so it just all depends on what's on the menu for that day.
Yeah, it could be a Monday, it could be a Thursday, it could be a Friday, Saturday, right?
That's usually weekend.
So wow, so you have several hundred head of cattle or horses. How many auctioneers do you have?
Oh, well, it depends. If you do a big thoroughbred sale multi-day, they'll have probably 3, maybe 4, and you'll have about
wow.
You'll have 6, 8 ringmen that work out in the audience, helping the auctioneer catch all the bids.
Wow, that's amazing.
I have done, when I was doing, I was very fortunate to do fine art and antiques with one of the number one importers of reproduction pieces. And I've actually done 9 hours and 15 minutes without a break by myself. And
oh my gosh, that's heavy duty. That's what you get. You're concentrating. It's exhausting. You're standing up, right?
Yes. Well, I got a chair and sit down. I was on a podium and I was letting the owner of the product color. In other words, he would talk about part of it, and then if we got into something he wasn't like, I knew an awful lot about Persian rugs. So when we would get into a Persian rug, then I would talk about the making, where it was from, and all that type of thing. But most of the time he did the color on the furniture and the marble and the bronzes, and unless it was an artist that I was familiar with.
Now okay, so you know a lot about Persian rugs, right, Mike?
Well, it depends. Well, now you have to realize I haven't done this for a number of years, but I did it. I did an auction sale in South Florida once. We were selling a lot of Persian rugs for some reason that day. I mean, it was a 130,000 square foot building. We had everything there. But people were there that day requesting rugs. So I was putting the rugs up. In walk 5 Persian rug dealers. And they sit down in a chair. And I went, there's just nothing good about this. When this is over, they're going to tell me everything that I did wrong. They're going to tell me all the mistakes I made. And that runs through your mind because here are, sure enough, born into the business experts. And I was so relieved when it was over because, sir, may we speak with you? And I went, whoa. Walked over and said, yes, sir. How are you? I'm Mike Booth. We shook hands and he said, I want to tell you something. And I said, okay. He said, you know more about Persian rugs than most white people I've ever met.
Wow. That's a good compliment, huh?
So I went, whoosh, thank you, Jesus.
Wow. And he was an Iranian? He was
Yeah.
Iranian?
Oh, yeah. They were, I don't know if they were from Iran or if they were from, but yeah, no, I take that back. They were Iranian. I was trying to think they might've been from Pakistan, but I think they were from Iran. Yes, sir.
Mike, it behooves me to request that you, after you've done some auctioneering, that you give us a cowboy poem.
Okay. Which
Please, kind sir.
All right.
Please, kind sir.
We'll do, how about if I do the one that is the title of the book? A Cowboy.
All right. Okay.
And this is
What's the name of it?
A Cowboy Remembers, like the book, a cowboyremembers.com. That's where you go to get the book. I wrote we titled it after this. When I was doing albums and singing, you always have to figure out, what do you want to name the album? And when I was doing this book, the lady that edited it said, what are you going to name this? I said, well, I never thought about it. And she says, well, as much as you've done in singing, surely to goodness you'll come up with a good name. And she was very pleased with this one, A Cowboy Remembers. I had a customer when I wrote this back a long time ago, and she was the owner of Scribner's bookstores, and she read some of my poetry, and this was her favorite. So I'll do this one for you. Right. Every one of my poems, I have an intro. In other words, instead of just saying, here's a poem, turn the page, here's another poem, I have an intro, and I'll do the intro and everything to try to give you an idea. I'm on top of a hill out in Colorado, and I'm out looking over this big ranch. It's like, no, it's not huge, but it's backed up to a national forest, and it's almost 700 acres. And below it says, I had a ranch for many years, and running it brought to light the meaning of the cowboy way of life. I have been without a horse to call my own for some time now, and I do miss having my own horse. The cowboy way of life has all but vanished with today's high-tech world. Much of the ranching done today happens with technology. That is not to say that there aren't plenty of true cowboys who pound leather daily and wrestle with stock. They brave the elements Monday through Sunday, week after week. Still, as times change, I want to relive a little of the old days in my poem and give you a vision of the cowboy who is sitting on a rise, remembering the days gone by. The cowboy remembers. The sun is setting as I watch from the hill. Time was passing so rapidly while my job was losing its thrill. I was remembering a time when the cowboy rode the line, a time of free and open range. That life is non-existent with so much change. The change you see includes miles and miles of wire. It seems the owners who strung it will never tire. I was reminded of cattle drives, bad chuck wagon food, and the smell of dirty hides. How sleeping under the stars would be so cold and the ground so hard. Riding drag and eating dirt. How falling off a half-grain broke colt would really hurt. The excitement of cowboys after days of no water, finding a stream with a hoop and a holler. After a month on the trail, reaching a town where a church and saloon or anything can be found. But it's all gone now, that great life of prowl. The time when a handshake and grin were mightier than any paper and pen. When your horse and saddle was all you had, I can remember, and it wasn't so bad. Well, the sun is almost gone, and my shadow's growing long. I guess I need to get back, catch up with the times, and get my mind back on track. Things have changed, that's for sure. But I can still remember. There you go.
Thanks a lot, Mike. That's a beautiful poem. So, I mean, can the Cowboys show us back to the way to national sanity?
Well, they don't have a rut in the road, but they do have a path to travel. How's that?
Right. Sure. So, tell me some things that everybody needs to know about cowboy culture.
Well,
that'll be insightful.
Well, pretty much to me, the cowboy culture includes 3 or 4 or 5 different things. One, well, let's say 3 of them. The 3 top to me are God, family, and country. Also, as I said, respecting caring about your neighbor, making sure that you literally keep your mind where it should be, and not worry about, there's an old saying, don't worry about the small stuff and everything's the small stuff. We have a tendency to think that everything is a burden. And to me, the cowboy way of life, it's not a burden to have to go work with stock. It's a pleasure. It's a gift.
Right. But which means you have to always embrace sacrifice.
Well, that's part of life. If everything was easy and everything was given to you and there were no sacrifice, that's what happens now. When that happens to us for any length of time, we tend to find ourselves unappreciative. And I mean, that's me, that's everybody, that's human nature. And then all of a sudden, something that before you would go, oh, there's nothing to this, you go, oh man, this is miserable. But it's only because that we have a tendency to spoil ourselves. And we are so blessed in this country that if you'll just load up and go somewhere else for a few months, you'll come back and go, you know what, it's not so bad here. I remember being in a traffic jam doing an auction out in California, and I thought traffic in Atlanta, Georgia was bad because we were in Duluth, just outside Atlanta. And we were coming from Venice Beach, and I had to go back to Downey, which is just outside LA. 14 miles I had to go. Took me 3.5 hours with no wreck. And I got there and I said, I'm so sorry. I know I'm late. I said, it took 3.5 hours. They said, well, it's Friday. Man, that's about right. And then I got back to Atlanta and I started looking at the people on the left and right going, I'm really sorry. This is not so bad after all.
Wow. Yeah, sure. So then, now you spent a lot of time in rodeo, which is kind of the quintessential Western cowboy event, right?
It is. And I've been very fortunate. I've got a nephew that rode bulls, and I'm wow. going to church, and I've got a guy in my small group, and we're sitting around talking one night. Now we're in Atlanta, Georgia, in a small group. Both of us are a little bit longer in the tooth. And he looked down, saw my boots that day. And I don't know why, because I wear boots every day of my life. And he goes, I like your boots. I said, thank you very much. He said, yeah, I was a bullfighter in the 1970s. So it turns out that he was a clown or bullfighter at rodeos for a number of years. And one of the poems in the book, he told me a story. And I went home next morning and wrote a poem about the situation that had happened to him. And it's the cowboy culture is different. And when you run into someone that you have a connection with from the cowboy way of life, believe it or not, it's like you've known each other your whole life, not that you just met.
Sure. Tell me about what did this, I guess you call him a rodeo clown, right?
Right. He was the bull, whenever the bull riders that at the end of the rodeo, or now they have Professional Bull Rider Association. I'm actually going to one with him in January. We're going to go together, our wives and us, and we're going to go watch the PBR. But he was the clown that was out there painted up and with the baggy pants on. And if the cowboy gets hung up on the bull, then it's his job to get that cowboy off. It's his job to keep that cowboy from being hurt as much as he can and try not to get himself hurt in the process.
Wow. So what was the story he had to tell you?
He was out in Sedona, Arizona, and he was working for a contractor for the first time. And he said, it's tough in this, the cowboys kind of look at you sideways because the clown that was supposed to be there to help me didn't show up. So I had to do it by myself. And they're all going, their lives are on the line. And I mean, every time a chute is open in a bull riding, guy can get hurt permanently for the rest of his life, if not killed. So these guys are looking at him like, are you any good at this? Because my life is in your hands. And so he was telling me about a situation where the gate opened and the bull went to the corner and there was just no way to get in. And the cowboy slid down in the well, meaning he was getting ready to fall off. And he had to just see an opening and dive through it. And, he got hooked by the bull and threw him in the air, but it really didn't hurt him too bad. But he was able to get the Cowboy loose, and it was right up against that fence. And I mean, both of them had a real good chance to get hurt real bad. So it was kind of an interesting situation for him. And I put it into words the next day, and I sent it to him, and he teared up.
Yeah.
He said it took me, I felt like I was right back in the arena again, which was a big compliment from me, I think.
Sure. Wow. So it's fascinating, to think they're like, the cowboy, the clowns at the rodeo, they're like special forces.
Oh, they are. I mean, you want to talk about, I mean, you might be pretty sporty to be able to rope that calf, but I'm going to tell you something. You might be really good catching the heels, and you might be okay on a bareback horse, but when you get on the bull, it's a whole different deal.
Oh, it's amazing how the danger that you face, and this is just like it's a sport. I mean, it's one hell of a sport. It's like, I guess you can say it's the America's answer to bullfighting.
Well, that's why they're actually called bullfighters. They're not called clowns. The clown is kind of the guy that plays the guitar, tells the jokes, walks around, but the bullfighters are the guys that really get in and do all of the dangerous stuff. That's the bullfighter. And he's called a bullfighter even in the arena.
Right. So then do they, like a matador, do they, or a torero, I mean, do they have anything they use to kill the cow or the bull?
No. They a lot of times you have to, almost everything you do where there's a crowd of people is entertainment. Like you here on the radio show, you're entertaining people. If you're at a rodeo, sure. The rodeo is into entertaining people. That's why the clown, the rider will get thrown off, and the clown runs and jumps in a barrel, and then the bull comes and hits the barrel and knocks him down, and and then he guys that are real rambunctious maybe will get the bull to drop his head, and then they'll run up, jump on his head and run down his back and jump off the backside. And they'll do all kinds of things to try to entertain the crowd because that's what the people are there for. They're there to be entertained. And so whatever he can do to try to entertain them, then that's what he does, as well as the important part, taking care of that cowboy.
Well, and in both of those things, the entertainment and rescuing the cowboy, both of them require a tremendous amount of courage. I mean, get on the back of a steer.
Well, I got to tell you, I don't have the intestinal fortitude to be a clown. I never have.
Wow.
I haven't. I mean, because I've seen guys get hit pretty sporty, and it's you got to have. You're exactly right. That's the best description I've ever heard. You have to have courage.
Yeah. Wow. It's an amazing thing, huh? And the what they say about rodeo athletes is that they're humble, unassuming, and they want to see. Good.
If you met this guy, he would be, if you looked under humble in the dictionary, you'd see a picture of him.
Wow. So these guys, what kind of money do they make? Is that a hard way to earn a living?
Well, it is, but it's like anything else. If you're really good at something, you make more than the guy that's just starting. I know that I got to meet a young man that gave up being rodeo clown, and they handed him a contract for several rodeo show televised, and he was going to make really good money. And I'm not going to do a name. I think they were going to pay him $4,000 a show. And he
How long is the show? Could be 2 hours.
Well, yeah, but I mean that's just him working the bulls, and he turned it down and became a youth minister at a church. And he said, I felt like my calling, and it was to be that youth. And he was he was the top of his game. He was 29 years old. I mean, he was not past prime. I don't think he was that old. He might have
And
been
in really great shape. He was in
This
great
was
shape. He could move quickly, good reflexes.
I'm 5'0" and he was about 6'4", and he was faster than a speeding bullet, man. I mean, and really and truly, for someone to give up something like that, I mean, that just, again, that steps up to say that the cowboy way of life, you put things in perspective and you put what's important first. And to him, being that youth minister was more important than fame and money.
Wow. Yeah. So, and now I want to ask you a quick question. How is it that somebody can unleash their inner cowboy? Does everybody have an inner cowboy?
I think we all do. I really do.
Mike, is it we're all cowboys?
I think I do. I think that everyone has a little bit of cowboy in you. I mean, because if you're a straight shooter, you got a little bit of cowboy in you. If you're honest, you got a little bit of cowboy in you. If you love your family, got a little bit of cowboy in you. You love your country, got a whole lot of cowboy in you. You love God, you got cowboy in you. So I think every one of us, at some attribute, if we look for it, it's there.
Right. And so let me ask you a question. This is a rhetorical question for everybody nowadays, or it should be. A lot of times it's never asked, but it should be asked. And that is, the importance of keeping Christ in Christmas.
Oh, man. I said earlier, without Christ, there would be no Christmas. If you'll remember back at the birth of Christ, there were 3 men that came to visit him. They were considered in their day wise men. So 3 wise men felt like Christ needed to be in Christmas. And 3 of the wisest men of that era, supposedly, who went and knew not to go back to Herod. So without Christ, there would be no Christmas. Period. Without Christ, there would be no Christmas.
Well, sure. So that's a given. We all, I mean, anybody who thinks about it a little bit will have to admit that. But for a cowboy, how important is Christ?
Well, to be honest, he's first. At least with me, he's first. Because you have children, Bill?
Yes, sir. So I do. That's 6.
Would you send your son to die for me? I wouldn't send my die for you. And
sure.
I'm being upfront. So how important is Christ? He's first. Everything else is second. Period.
Yeah. Wow. I've never looked at it like that. I've never thought about that. But think about that, huh? Sending your son to die for somebody else. It's amazing. So how about you making it? I mean, were you born and had to make it big? Because you get to the point where you can have 60 horses or 20 cattle. That's a certain economic achievement. Were you always well off, or?
No, not at all. I grew up and I thought, I mean, I'm not being facetious here. I thought everybody had holes in their shoes, and I thought everybody put cardboard when there was a hole in your shoe. And I thought everybody wore their. I lived with my grandparents till I was 15, and my uncles. I have uncles that are not a whole lot older than me, and we would all share clothes and share the same bedroom. And there was 4 of us in the bedroom, and we had a full size bed, a cot, and a pallet on the floor, and we would flip at night to see who would have to sleep on the pallet. So I learned how to flip because I'd hear them all say heads before we'd flip and tell. Finally, I'm not sharpest knife in the kitchen, but I'm a knife and I'm in the kitchen. And I started figuring out something's going on because I'm on the floor every night. And so I learned I learned a lot. And one of my oldest uncles Well, my oldest uncle, Jack, and my grandfather are the two people in my life that I've tried to fashion my life after. My uncle, that is my oldest uncle, is 10 years older than me, and he's the one who got me started in horses. Without him, I probably wouldn't have been in horses. But he started me when I was 8, and then I started traveling with him, and he was out showing horses, and I go with him, and he'd be in jail today with what we did, because he had slats on the side of the truck, jumped the horse up in the bed of the truck. I'd get a chair, sat in the back of the truck with the horse, and off we would go, because he'd have his girlfriend or eventually his wife, and they'd be in the front seat of the truck, and I'd be sitting in the back with the horse.
Right. You were just a little kid, right? Supposedly. Yeah. And I've heard that in Nebraska, where my kids are, there's certain laws you can't have a person under 18 in the back of the truck,
Oh, well, I would have, like I said, some of the stuff we did, I'd be under it.
That's funny. Wow. So, well, I gotta keep in mind you've got a commitment in a few minutes. And let me ask you a quick question, Mike. Well, in your opinion, I mean, you're a singer as well, right?
Yes, sir. I've recorded about 9 albums. Two of the albums, the backup group with Elvis Presley was the Jordanaires. I don't know if you remember them or not.
No, I don't. I didn't heard of them.
They were from 1954 to 1969. They were with Elvis. They were in all of the movies. They did. And then DJ Fontana was his drummer from 1954. And he produced the first album I did with them. And the Jordanaires sang back up. And then when I turned 60 years old, my wife called Ray Walker and said, "Ray, y'all want to do another album with Mike?" And he said, "You tell that young man to come on up here." And so I went up and did another album with them about 10 years ago. And
did you know Elvis? Wait, did you know Elvis, Mike?
No, I didn't. I didn't get with them till after he'd passed. But they opened for me singing at a number of shows on the road. And DJ actually played drums for me a few times at my concerts.
Wow.
I've had a lot of fun, and music's been fun for me. It really has. It's been fun.
Do you have a favorite country and Western Christmas song?
No, actually, my favorite Christmas song is "I'll Be Home for Christmas," because I spent so much time on the road. There was a 3-year run, and that I was gone so much that my wife said, "Honey, are we going to take a vacation this year?" Well, I went, "Well, we take a vacation every year." She says, "We haven't had one for 2 years." Because she said, "I've kept a calendar. And how many days have you been home over the past 3 years?" I said, "Well, honey, I don't know. I've been home all that I can." She pulled the calendar out, and I'd been home 30 days. I'd slept in my bed out of a 3-year run. 30 days.
Wow.
So I'll be home.
A lot.
So "I'll Be Home for Christmas" has a real special meaning to me.
Yeah, that's an amazing story. Wow. That's great. Well, Mike, listen, I'd like to have this as the final word to be continued. As I hope I can have you on again, because it's been so interesting to hear about so much.
I can't tell you how much I appreciate you having me on your show, and I truly mean that, because I'm a guy trying to get along in life, and you're somebody pretty special. So I really appreciate, and most people don't realize this. If I were to sincerely ask you, what is your most precious commodity? I'm asking you right now, what is your most precious commodity? To me, your most precious commodity,
time.
Most people will say health, and they're right, but you can get sick and get well. But once somebody gives you 1 minute of their time, they can never have that back. So they've given you something you can never, ever have again. And Bill, you've given me your time. And for that, I'll be eternally grateful. Thank you so much.
Hey, thanks, Michael Booth. Folks, check him out. The website again for Michael is cowboyremembers.com. Check it out and get that book for Christmas. A Cowboy Remembers Western Religious and Patriotic Poetry. Enrich yourself and the lives of your loved ones and your friends with that book. Thank you, Mike.
Bill, thank you so much. Have a blessed Merry Christmas and the happiest of New Year's.
Likewise, Michael. Merry Christmas to you.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proudly we hailed at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars rule the perilous fight. Oh, the red marks we watched were so gallantly streaming. Get the rockets ready, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Just as the
That's your national anthem.